Welcome to Loreweek. I'm your host, Lore Cool. Cool, right? Okay. Today I wish to discuss with you the most amazing things in gaming, including EA, lawsuits, Nintendo lawsuits, Nintendo stock market, so a bunch of garbage, really. Now, I'm going to be kind of in a rush here because obviously today is the beginning of Games Done Quick. So, basically, GDQ takes precedence over me, so if I talk too long, we're going to chop it off. I got like 2.5 hours here, though, so I'm not super worried about it. So, I don't think we'll go that long. Hopefully, fingers crossed, I do talk a little bit too much. Good morning, Cloud of the Stars. Good morning, Hazardous. Dream Whisperer, Bragwin, Platty, Kay, Snickerfriend, Tazara. What is up, guys? Kay, it's rare to see you this early. What's up, guys? Now, so I'm just going to jump into this. Show news, as I said, first off. Despite everything, I've mentioned several times that, we've done it, we've finished the backlog, but truth be told, we kind of haven't. There is actually still some stuff in the backlog as of this point in time. And I do want to kind of nuke those things out of the backlog. Because that's the way I think. I literally, you're going to make fun of me, but I literally get more stressed when I am behind on things. So I've decided, after some glancing at the schedule and some mathing out things, that we're going to be kind of focusing on nuking that backlog over the course of the next several months. Like Kai Snow. We need to get Kai Snow out of the backlog. What are you doing in the backlog, man? But thank you very much, regardless. Even though you're in the backlog, I appreciate your sub. Thank you. If you know what you want to put that towards, let me know. Otherwise, we will all stab you with pointy sticks. Now, speaking of which, website is up to date on all that stuff. I spent a little bit of time last night adding things. So, before I say anything else, how many of you guys have been checking the website? I'm honestly curious, because there's a few things that are new and a few things that are different. And I have a weird feeling that none of you guys have seen any of it. Which is fine, I suppose. It just makes me sad. Because, for those of you who haven't been checking, we have a new button. You got it, Kai Snow, you got it. Hang on, let me write that down. Kai Snow. Elden Ring. Probably not spelling that right. There's a new button there, which apparently nobody's actually noticed, because nobody's even commented on it. Which leads to the Loreweek Stance series, which we have started last week, actually. The second episode just went live last night, in fact. And I was curious if anybody even noticed that was there. I didn't want to do a big public announcement like I'm doing right now, mostly because I was curious how many of you actually noticed it, or of your own volition, right? Just a pure curiosity thing. Regardless, that's live now and will continue to go live. Hopefully every week. I'm not going to commit to that because, everything else is higher priority. So we were originally going to be playing Judgment next Monday. After some thought, however, I've decided to move the Judgment run back a bit. It's going to happen. It's like Valvedrix over there. Valvedrix is still going to happen. Like, there's nothing I can do about it. Valvedrix just is. Is that a real sub, Valvedrix? I know that's a stupid question, but it's a weird comment you left. Anyways, the Judgment run is still going to happen. All those runs are still going to happen. But they've been pushed back a little bit in favor of another run, which I've decided to officially and formally rebrand. Now, we will still kind of be lore running it as we go and discussing it as we go, but I felt like rebranding it was the simplest and easiest way to kind of bypass all of the issues that I've been having when it comes to that run. So that's on the calendar now. That's scheduled. I've actually spent some of this morning getting set up for it and ready for it. So that's a thing. Next thing I want to mention. So I mentioned the backlogging. As much as I love GDQ, I'm probably going to not really be watching it this week. As much as that hurts. Because I have work to do. I have mini nations to work on. I have 3 mini nation shows to clog through. And I've already decided the specific order I'm going through those mini nations. That order is, we're going to go through Rebels. That was the oldest one, the first one funded. Then we're going to go through Young Justice. Then we're going to go through My Little Pony. I've already got Rebels kind of ready to go. In fact, I'm going to start working on Rebels basically as soon as this happens. I'm going to crunch. I'm just going to be honest about it. I'm just going to crunch. I'm going to work, the 90-hour work weeks that I need to do and just get it done and get it over with. I don't think I'll actually get Rebels done this week. It is physically possible for me to. I've already estimated that it's going to take roughly 90 hours to finish the Rebels Mini Nation series. I could do that this week. So we'll see. I'm going to try. I'm going to do my best, guys. Why My Little Pony? Well, I mean, ignoring the fact that people paid for it, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's a good show. That's a good time to mention, by the way, that the My Little Pony mini nations will have comments disabled on them. Because the internet is a disgusting, horrible place filled with awful people. So anyways, so we're going to crunch through Rebels. Then I don't even know how to get a hold of Young Justice. I haven't even thought about that yet. I need to figure out what it is and where it is and how to watch it. I'll figure it out. I just haven't looked into it yet. It's not even the show I thought it was, so I'm walking in blind. I'm pretty sure I've never even seen it. So that should be fun. So another thing, speaking of the show, I already mentioned the run that's happening starting next Sunday, a week from today. I haven't even said the name of it because if I have to tell you the name of it, then you're not checking the website and you're not doing the job that I want you to do. So what I really want is to talk about the other three major lore runs that are still in the backlog. Those are the Nintendo lore runs, Zelda, Metroid, Mario. Now, all three of those are all kind of... I don't want to call them low priority. It's more like those are all in waiting right now. The Zelda lore run, I've already figured out exactly which games I want to play and exactly how I want to play them. There are a few issues on the way. I've already decided, based on some evidence and based on some information, that we're just going to skip Skyward Sword functionally. At best, I will try to find a video file and ask for permission to use said video file in order to try and just showcase the story of Skyward Sword, because I'm not playing that damn game. And then we'll basically go through... So the Zelda lore run we'll be doing in terms of arcs, rather than in terms of timeline. Because we can't really do it linearly in the strictest sense of the word. So, for example, we're not going to do Skyward, Minish, Ocarina. What we're more likely to do is Skyward and then Ocarina. And then immediately after Ocarina, we would do Majora's. Then we would probably go ahead and shift to one of the other ones, either Wind Waker and then talking about the other two, or Twilight Princess, and then shift over and do Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, and Link Between Worlds. Now, I do want to mention the games we will not be playing for the Zelda lore run. The Zelda pseudo lore run, excuse me. These are, at the absolute minimum, the games we will absolutely never play for the Zelda pseudo lore run are Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. Now, I want to explain why very briefly. So those are DS games, which is already a pain to play. It's not the most irritating type of game to play. That would probably be the Wii or the GameCube at this point, which is the same thing. But that's the first hurdle. The second hurdle is Phantom Hourglass controls pretty terribly for all of the good things that game does. It's actually legitimately irritating to play. And Spirit Tracks requires you to sing on key at certain points in the game in order to progress. Now, there are ways around both of these problems, but both games have the same general problem of being kind of irritating to play. Oh, there we go. Because both of them were designed around utilizing the gimmicks of the DS. The microphone, the stylus, all that fun stuff. I am not exaggerating in the slightest. In fact, the first time I ever played through Spirit Tracks, I got stuck. In fact, I think I talked about this during the rumination. I got stuck at the first singing section, just flat, could not progress, because it wouldn't acknowledge it. As with several... This is actually a problem with several Zelda games. Several Zelda games are innovative, creative. They really push the boundaries of the system they're on. And as a result, they tend to be kind of bad games. This is our problem with Skyward as well, if you were paying attention. So we're not playing the DS games. Absolutely, you can't change my mind on that one. I am probably not going to be playing the Oracle's games. Ignoring the fact that they're not that great and they're not that fun and there's some issues with them and there's basically no lore to either of them. Well, that's it. That's why we're probably not playing the Oracle's games. We'll mention them and we'll talk about them, but I don't think a full playthrough of the two Oracles games is really something that's on the table. We will be playing Link's Awakening, not only because that's a decent game, but more to the point because we'll be paying the remake of that one. I think what I've decided is... Well, I haven't decided. I haven't decided what I'm going to do about that yet. Either we're going to be playing through the remake as a premiere run and then later play through it for the lore run, or what is slightly more likely is we'll go ahead and slot it into the lore run and we'll do a rating of the remake as we're going through the lore run, which I think would be more logical. Thank you very much, Mr. Botland. As always, appreciate those bits. Do you know what you want to put those towards? So we will probably be playing Link's Awakening. That leaves 1 and 2, which are games that basically I don't think really fit in the lore run or have any purpose in the lore run. The only reason we would play those games is if we were doing a in-depth classic on them. And considering there's probably going to be in-depth classics on those games in the future, yeah. So that's why those are probably not happening. You got it, Mr. Botland. Thank you again. There we go. So, that's the Zelda lore run. Zelda pseudo-lore run. Now, the Metroid pseudo-lore run, that's actually a lot easier. So we're going to be playing the GBA remake of 1. We're going to be playing the fan remake of 2. And then we'll be playing just Super. And I know what you're thinking, well, that's not timeline-wise. No, it isn't. But 1, 2, and Super form one fairly cohesive arc, whereas Prime 1, Prime 2, and Prime 3 form one fairly cohesive arc. And these two arcs are basically completely unconnected from each other. Like, there's obviously some references here, and there's some connection points here. But for the most part, these are two separate story arcs. So rather than do it chronologically, again, like with the Zelda situation, we're not going to do 1, 2, Prime 1, Prime 2, Prime 3, 3. We're going to do 1, 2, 3, Prime 1, 2, 3. Then, very last, and we will be playing this, we will be playing Fusion, absolutely, for the lore run. Of course we will. It's probably one of the most lore-intensive of the Metroid games, for good and for ill. I can't think of any reason why I would want to play Other M on camera. First and foremost, Other M is a Wii game, which, as I mentioned earlier, Wii games and GameCube games are some of the most frustrating games to stream or to play right now for me. It's that unique period of gaming which is just aggravating to stream and connect to my computer. The second problem is the fact that Other M is garbage. And I don't actually want to stream that game or play that game again. I haven't decided. I might be convinced if you guys really want me to. I'm basically going to leave that in the we'll see category. Kind of like we did with Modern Warfare 3. We'll see is the answer there. But Other M is not currently on the docket. Just the 7 games I just mentioned will be on the docket. Now I'm going to pause for a moment and say, hi, Dry Heap. Welcome to the show. As I say to everyone who pokes their head in here, don't be a stranger. Right now we're just doing Loreweek, which is my little news thing every Sunday. I hope you enjoy. You have any thoughts, comments, questions, you're more than welcome to. Yeah, exactly, Dakota. I mean, the only way I could imagine doing Other M is basically to lament on it, to do basically a live lamentation of it, okay, let me explain why Other M is crap. So you see this scene, and you see this scene? I'm going to explain exactly how it feels to control in third person with a static camera a Metroid game. Just that's the only real reason we do that. Now Tazara, he loves Other M. It's actually his favorite game of all time. So he might actually make that happen by himself. But in the interim, I do want to say thank you, as ever and as always, Tazara. Thank you. And you know the question. Exactly, Anthony. Exactly like that. Oh, Anthony! Oh, it's you. Hang on. Hang on just a sec. Where did I write it down? Where did I write it down? Oh, Dry Heap can choose. Well, Dry Heap, what would you like to put that towards? Oh, where did I write those down? It's a separate doc. There it is. On June 8th, at 11:44 a.m. my time, you donated 15 euros. And I didn't find out about that for, like a week. So what would you like to put that towards, Anthony? And thank you very, very much, Anthony, for that donation. Much appreciated. Oh, you got it, Snicker Friend. That's a game I'm actually really looking forward to playing. It's just sitting over there on my Switch pile. I just got a pile of Switch games over there. So noted, Snickerfriend, and thank you again. Okay, so that's how we're doing the Zelda stuff. Spellforce 3, you got it. I know what you're thinking, Anthony. Why didn't it go in? To explain in brief, so I got like 6 donations in the months of May and June that didn't actually go through. They didn't actually get processed and they didn't go through. I've explained this before, so to explain in very brief, PayPal doesn't like certain types of donations if you're not a registered person, if you're donating from out of country. You know, there's several reasons where they'll just hold a donation and say this isn't going through. This is suspicious. So those 6 donations were all held. Now the catch is when a donation is held, I don't get any of the usual information I do from a donation. I don't get the pop-up, I don't get the comment saying what you want to put it towards, and I don't get your nickname. All I get is the email attached to the account that was tossing it at me, the amount, the date, and the currency. That's all I get. So I've had to kind of reverse engineer who these people are. I'm down to 2 people who have mysterious donations. I still don't know who they are. I know their emails. Obviously, I'm not going to show that in a live format. But if you happen to be someone who donated on June 10th for 50 British pounds, June 11th for 10 British pounds, or if you're a separate person from that person who on June 9th donated 15 Canadian dollars, let me know. Because those 3 donations are still just kind of off there in limbo land and have been processed. Now, I've actually gone through the effort and irritation. Yeah, exactly, Anthony Jeff. So I've gone through the effort and irritation of dealing with PayPal and signing up and pushing through some bureaucracy to basically try and make it so that never happens again. Because it's a colossal pain every time that happens. It usually doesn't happen all that often, but with more European people and with more out-of-country people donating, it's becoming more of an issue. So I've ripped the Band-Aid off, and we're just going to deal with that. Hopefully. Hi, Eisermaster. Now, so that's the Zelda lore run, that's the Metroid lore run. Let's talk about the Mario lore run. Now, this one's actually going to be fairly linear and easy to do, funnily enough. We're just going to do... We're going to glare at Tazara for 5 minutes. That's a lie, we're not going to do it that long. Damn Europeans! No, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Thank you, Tazara, very, very much, as always. And Anthony, if you want to know what you want to put that towards, let me know. Super Mario RPG, which is on the SNES, is something that I've actually debated off and on whether I want to do for the lore run. Or same with Paper Mario, same with Paper Mario 2, same with Super Paper Mario. After some thought, what I've decided we're going to do is we're going to do all of those games as in-depth classics as part of the lore run. So we're going to be rating them as we go through them and discussing the lore and presentation thereof. So we're just going to kind of rebake those from typical lore runs into adding in the review system of discussion, pluses and minuses, and all that fun stuff. Then... So functionally what you guys have already funded for the Mario lore run, the Mario RPG lore run, excuse me, is the Mario RPG In-Depth Classic series. And that's Spellforce again. There we go. So noted. Now, there are 5 other Mario RPGs, and after some substantial thought on the matter, I've decided that we're actually going to pull those out of the Mario lore run entirely and just leave those as a separate thing for the future. Because just going through Super Mario RPG, Paper Mario 2, and Super Paper Mario is going to be a fairly substantial chunk of time. And they also have functionally nothing to do with the 5 Mario and Luigi games. So we're going to leave the Mario and Luigi games for something else in the future. Probably a more classic lore run. Since that's basically going to be 3DS, 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 3DS. Is what all those are going to be. I think it's 5. Hang on. So there's 1, 2, Bowser's Story. Yep, no, it is 5. I'm right. Define bad choices, Mr. Floyd Pinkerton. Now, that only leaves one other lore run, which we still need to do. This is the one that is most likely to happen next after the Witcher 3 one, because now we're at the point where the only thing holding it back is my own schedule and time. And that would be the Final Fantasy 15 lore run. Now, I do actually have the... How do you kill Ciri in Witcher 3? I do have all of my documents and stuff for the FF15 lore run still ready to go. That's all good and set up. So that's just a thing that's basically just waiting on time. But like I said, that is the next thing that's going to happen as far as major events after the Witcher 3 event that's going to be happening. That's on the website. So probably not, Mr. Floyd Pinkerton. I don't actually understand why I'd even do that, to be completely honest. Apparently Syria can die in the worst ending. I don't think I even knew that. Maybe I did. I feel like maybe you guys told me about that when we were playing through it. Either way, probably not happening. Because time is the answer. Like, if you wanted me to do every type of playthrough of any given RPG, that's just insane. Possible, insane. Now, so some of you may remember there was an old series that me and Third both did called Then and Now. Then and Now was a series where I was going through a game that I knew, an older game, a NES game or a SNES game, that I was well familiar with, and basically trying to review it, whereas Third, who had never played those old games, decided to go ahead and go through it, and he's never played those games, so he was giving his review of it. It was a fascinating way to see different angles and different perspectives on things.
Oh, welcome. Pay close attention. Hopefully you'll learn something.
Of course I am, Cool Walker. Why wouldn't I? Okay, I don't... Hang on. Who's donating? It's Dry Heap. Well, thank you, Dry Heap. Thank you very, very much. As always, appreciate that support. Although, I can't help but notice, you still haven't told me what you want to put it towards. But I do still appreciate it. Thank you so much, sir. Ah! Ah! Hang on. Gotta write all these down really quick. No, it's 15, actually. What system is Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 on? Thank you very much, Uchiha Daisuke. Which I know I'm butchering your name, I apologize, but thank you, as always, for your subscription, and I've written that down towards Dragon Quest Builders, too. Switch? No, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1, the first one. And thank you very much, Mega DA Great, as ever, for your support. Thank you so much, sir. I've already put that down towards Plague Tale. PS2. Let me just look it up. As I feel like I've mentioned earlier, there's an era of games that are very irritating and frustrating to play on. And the PS2 happens to be right in that era. PS2, Wii, GameCube. Which is just, yeah. Apparently, it's on the GBA. That's funny. But according to this, it's on PC. Well, I obviously can't stream anything from Xbox. I'm not buying an Xbox, guys. It's not happening. Don't ask me to. So, let's do this. Okay, let's do this. Hang on. See, I can't accept that donation until I know I can stream the game. Speaking of which, whenever If and But shows up, I need to talk to him. Okay, so it's not on Steam. Let's see if it's on GOG. Well, it's very simple, Mike Romano. I check what the game's out on, and that answers my question. Like, for example, I spent the better part of an hour trying to get Star Trek Borg working the other day, and failed. For Shadowbringers. No, absolutely, 100% no, Snicker Friends. No, 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 no. So it's not on GOG and it's not on Steam. But if it's on PS4, how would I get it on PS4? So this is the kind of thing I do in my Micromono. I stall the stream to figure out if it's possible to play through a game. That is not sarcasm. No. I am not streaming FF14. It's not happening. Don't ask me to. God, no. No, 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 no. Okay, so here we go. The Marvel Ultimate Alliance bundle digital code for PS4. And I'm guessing this comes with 1 and 2? That doesn't even tell me. How do I find the specs for PC games? Well, it's actually pretty easy, Micromon. All I have to do is see which era it came out in, and that pretty much tells me all I need to. You're a little late for that, Zygmus. Rewind like 30 minutes. Go watch the VOD. I'm not going to repeat myself. Go watch the VOD. I'm just going to assume this comes with 1 and 2. So for $60, God, I could buy a PS2 game. Whatever, it's possible, and that's the only fact that matters. So, thank you, MegaDA, for the donation for Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1, which I have jotted down. I'm just going to make a quick note here on the PS4 for my own mentality. Thank you again. I don't think $500 would be enough, Alex. Now, Darth Tyrant says, why not? Time. I am already behind in my own mentality. I already have way too much stuff that's taking way too much time to push through. FF14 is a time sink, and basically nothing else. Don't get me wrong, I like the story of FF14, I do. But I don't feel like slogging through that game on stream. That would be an extremely boring, disinteresting stream. And it would be like trying to stream Tor again. That's what it would be like. So that's not happening, period. And it's also way too time-consuming, even if I was just to showcase just the story. And that's why I parallel it to Tor in specific. Because, well, there was some interesting story in the stuff we showed off on Tor, wasn't there? My 2 favorite storylines we did a stream of, Sith Warrior and Agent. And they were still very long, very boring, sloggy streams. And that was with people helping us, if you'll remember. So, no, I've learned my lesson. FF14 is not happening as a stream. The best I will ever do is I will continue and finish the Hildebrand quest arcs, which I am still saving for stream. Those are okay, because those are 99% cutscenes. That's just me basically starting the cutscene and letting it play. Where was I before 15 people donated? I actually don't remember. No, I didn't, Micromono. Where am I? Where was I? Where's my notes? Would I do a rumination? No. No. You want me to do a rumination on WoW? The entirety of WoW? No. So, Then and Now. So Then and Now was an old series that we did that I probably already described, but to get us back on track here. Third had never played the old games. I had played the old games. We both reviewed them, different perspectives. God damn you, Mega. Damn you. Mega DA, great, is awesome. Putting it towards Ghosts of Tsushima. You're very awesome. Thank you very, very much, sir. So, in order to try and continue this series, which has been dead for years at this point, Third and I have kind of tossed ideas back and forth on how to continue doing it, because we both have an interest in doing it. And you guys have actually said several times that you're interested in us continuing the franchise. And I've roped Bragwin into it, so she's doomed now. Although, and I mean no offense by this, Bragwin, but we're never letting you pick a game ever again. Now, what we're going to be doing is we've decided to bake it into our Thursday evening streams. Normally we play board games or, play D&D or whatever on our Thursday evenings. And as a consequence, all of us have sort of shunted out a little section of our times, of our schedules, that's already free, basically. And that's that section that is available. It's the only real time that Third and I have to hang out, except on the evenings when we actually go and do movies and stuff. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be continuing our Then and Now series in a live format, rather than the pre-recorded format we did it before. So every other Thursday evening, the intent is for us to do a Then and Now stream rather than board games, basically. So the way that the intended schedule would go, it would be a D&D game, then a board game night, and then a D&D night, and then a Then and Now night. So once a month, roughly, we would be doing a Then and Now stream in the evening. Now, Bragwin doesn't actually know this yet because Third and I talked this without her input. And she's not even responding, so I don't think she's actually in chat right now. But we're going to be doing a test Then and Now this very Thursday. Now I know what you're thinking. Well, you're not going to stream that, are you? GDQ's going on. No, we're not going to stream it. That's why it's a test thing. We're going to get used to the format and get used to doing and get some setup going and blah, blah, blah. But I've already done most of the behind the scenes, behind the camera work for many already. So, yeah, we're going to do that. Hopefully she'll like it. Hopefully you'll like it. Hopefully Third will like it. That's where we're at with the Then and Now series. Next thing, Mini Nations. So I publicly brand these as mini ruminations to make it nice and clear, since that's technically what they are. But we are going to be obviously continuing the Mini Nations. I already mentioned that. We're going through Rebels, we're going through Young Justice, and then we're going through My Little Pony. Now, he's like several weeks out at this point, Shadow Machine, so I don't even know what's going on at this point. I see him pop into Discord every now and again. That's about all I got. So, here's the big issue with Mini Nations. They're like 5-minute videos, right? Now I know what you're thinking, well, that's a good thing according to YouTube. And of course, there are reasons why shorter videos are a good thing. They're more digestible, they're, they're bite-sized things you can just watch, whatever. And they get more traffic and blah, 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 blah. The problem isn't the size of the video. The problem is the fact that I'm going to be slamming through literally dozens, if not actually hundreds, of these videos as I'm crunching for the next couple of weeks. How do I present that to you? Now, I've been debating this for some time. I've been debating this exact issue for a while, and I've never come up with an answer that really satisfies me. Because some of you probably don't actually care, but the idea is there's a thing called flooding, and it's usually considered to be a bad thing to flood. So if I just flood you guys with episodes, then that's probably a bad thing. But if I don't flood you guys with episodes, it's going to take absolutely fricking forever for the entire franchise to come out. It's 90-something episodes. So, that's just for the first show. That's just for Rebels. I got 3 shows to go through, remember. So I have not come up with a satisfactory answer for how to release these to you. If I was just doing it myself, if it was just me making the decision, what I would do is I would go ahead and sit down, record everything all in advance, and then I would go ahead and release 2 episodes a day, 5 days a week. That's my knee-jerk reaction. That's what my television brain tells me to do. There'd be one in the morning and one in the evening. And it would be a nice little digestible thing. I can tell you exactly when it would go live. It would go live at 9 and 9. That would give plenty of time in between the release of the main ruminations, which happen at 5 in the morning, and it would give a little bit of digestible content to kind of move through elsewise. Now, I feel like that's pulling back a bit from being complete flooding. It's still a little spammy, I'll be honest, but it's not truly flooding. I could completely flood you guys with episodes, trust me. If I wanted to right now, I could go to my YouTube channel and dump, I want to say like 40 of my stream archive videos on you just right now. Just let them all go live. That's flooding. I'm not doing that. Yeah, all 90 in a day. That is possible. That would actually be easier to do, to be completely blunt. I'm not doing that, don't worry. That's flooding. We're not doing that. So that's my knee-jerk reaction. That's my knee-jerk thought. 2 a day, 5 a week. Now, or actually 10 a week, but 5 days a week. And then leave the weekends kind of as an off thing. This kind of strikes a little bit of a balance point, to further explain my reasoning, in between making sure this stuff gets out in a reasonable manner, while at the same time not overwhelming you with it. Here's the final question. What channel do they go live on? Now, the original channel is basically the Rumination channel. So it makes the most sense from a branding perspective for them to go live on the Ruminations channel, because these are Ruminations. They're just mini Ruminations. But you can kind of see how this is effectively secondary content. It's not really main content. This is bonus content that originally I was doing as a consequence of my schedule, which now I'm doing because you guys have, paid money for this to happen, so this is happening. I'm committed at this point. Now, of course, everyone in chat is like, well, why would they go on the streams channel? Well, actually, ignoring the obvious idea of the secondary content concept, the more relevant point would be making a third channel just for these. I don't know what I think of that idea. So, what do you think of that idea? So, Venters asked what would be considered flooding. Now, I already told you the main thing that would be considered flooding. Here's 90 episodes. But I actually do have another example of flooding. I'm not going to name the channel, but there's a YouTube channel out there which releases a video about once every 4 to 8 hours. Always. Just consistently across the week. That's what I have actually heard several people who have followed that channel who have stopped following that channel because of flooding, because they considered that to be too much. For the record, if you're not keeping track, that's roughly 6 episodes a day. A little much. I'm pretty sure we already have playlists for the mini nations. So that's a thing I've already done. That is true, Shadow Machine. That is a valid point. I find that funny, Juanto. I'd say I wonder if people even watch my ruminations anymore, but then again, I remember that every single week I get tons of feedback and comments on both of my Star Trek episodes, so... I'm hearing a lot of the same answers here. I'm reading everything you're saying, guys. I'm just thinking. I thought about that, Schmeidolf. Honestly, the main reason I'm not going to do that is that's going to add to the workload. And I know this sounds petty, but I want the workload to be as small as possible. That was the whole point of the mini nations. Literally, the whole point was there is no production value. Because production value takes time. It's going to be me. It's going to be a green screen. And I'm not even going to edit the videos. I don't. It's from when I hit record to when I hit stop. It's one take done. So... that's the intent. Will I do mini nations later if I get more time? I gotta be honest, I have no idea how I could possibly have more time. Like Taitu, for example, he has infinite time. That's all he has, is Taitu. In fact, Taitu is in fact a Time Lord, which is really cool. But yeah, no, the whole point... Thank you very, very much, Taitu. As always, appreciate that sub. Thank you. Book ruminations are no. They're actually on the forbidden list for a reason. Books just don't fit my format at all. I can barely talk about books. So, no, I'm the Lich King, Mike Romano. If you know what you want to put that towards Taitu, let me know. Anyways, so Shadow Machine asks, will I ever have time? I don't see a way in which I will have more time. I know that sounds strange, but as long as I still have to put out, basically 3 pre-recorded videos a week, and X amount of streams every week, I don't see any possible circumstance in which more time is going to be a part of my life, unless I literally win the lottery. Cyberpunk, you got it. Thank you again, Taitu. So, I suppose the answer to your question, Shadow Machine, is I wouldn't be against the idea of doing more mini nations in the future. I actually like doing mini nations, but at the same time, like I said, it is a time thing. And as long as I am doing the other things that are, let's be honest with ourselves, paying most of my bills, I don't think more mini nations are really on the thing. It's not much editing, it's just merging. So, that... You're right, there wouldn't be much editing. All I'd have to do is pull up Premiere and drag the videos together and then process them out and then upload them out. And that's going to add, depending on how I do it, around 30 to 90 minutes per chunk of time. No, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not going to do that because there's actually several reasons I don't want to do that. First and foremost, this is going to sound petty and horrible and terrible, but I'd rather flood than combine or nitpick, or not nitpick, cherry pick, because the whole point, the entire main thrust of my show has always been that I don't bullet point, that I don't try to sit down and say, well, here's my thoughts on season 1. I could do that, but I don't want to. I'm philosophically opposed to the idea. So I don't want to cherry pick episodes. I want to cover every episode back front to back, just like I do with the shows. Right? Does that make sense? I've been asked that question a lot about the shows. Actually, why are you doing every single episode of Voyager? Why are you doing every single episode of Babylon 5? Because that's the whole point for me. And of course, a lot of people appreciate that because I'm basically the only one who does that. Because most other channels do the cherry-picking thing. Look at Sci-Fi Debris. Look at Lore Reloaded. And I mean, no offense to either of those channels. They're both great channels. But my point is, they go for this episode, and then this episode, and then this episode. I cover everything. That's my shtick, basically. So that's why I don't want to cherry-pick in response to that question. As an answer to why I don't push them all into one thing, again, it doesn't... I know you're not implying cherry-picking them. I know you're not, but someone else earlier mentioned cherry-picking. You're implying merging them together, which, at that point, I don't like that for basically a lot of reasons, because I like the... First of all, having a large... Yeah, Penske File's another one. That does actually do it in order. I don't like the idea of someone going and trying to find information on episode 36 and therefore having to pull up file 30 through 36 in order to figure out what's going on there. And also, it would make titling the videos kind of strange and not really something that would work out that well, especially if someone is searching for episode name. They basically wouldn't find my episode because there's a finite number of text I could put there, right? So I'd only put... So, for example, if I was to do episodes 1 through 6, the file name would have... the actual YouTube video name would have to be something like Star Wars Rebels episode 1 through 6. And I couldn't put the names of the episodes there, so I wouldn't be able to find that. And as a final point... It makes it easier to digest, and of course it makes it more prolific on YouTube's own algorithms, because as much as I hate it, I do need more views, and YouTube's algorithms value smaller videos. So that's all the reasons why I don't want to do the combining, in addition to the time involved in editing. Sinisterwing asked, would I hire an editor if I had the funds? Funny, interesting question. I've thought about that several times, and I'm not sure the answer is yes. I know that sounds strange, but I've actually thought about this before. The only way I could have an editor is if I gave that editor all the notes on what I want edited, which would mean I would still be doing all of the time investment of editing. I just wouldn't actually do the physical editing myself. So at that point, there would be no gain, only loss. So it's either that or I would just trust them to edit my video down, which I don't, to be completely honest. So a slave, no slaves. All that being stated, so I've heard a lot of your guys' thoughts, and you did have some good ideas, and I don't want to sound like I'm shooting Onan's ideas down completely. I am considering your ideas, and I value them. But what do you guys think of 2 episodes a day, 5 days a week for the mini nations once we actually start pushing those out? Cloning would make things easier, yeah. Or just being able to freeze time for a while. Do you know how much work I would get done if I could just pause time? I could also do them rotating. So instead of morning and evening my time, I could do them middle of the night and noon my time. What that would mean is if you were to look at the circle of time that is the day, that would mean it would be rumination, mini nation, nothing, and then mini nation, like this. I know, Dakota. I know. That's why I'm trying to push through this and get it done. I've committed to it. That's how that works. People have already paid money for this. I've already committed to it. It's already happening. So, I'm going to crunch. I've already been honest with you. I'm going to crunch, and I'm just going to push through it and get it done. Again. Is that it? Okay, so I talked about the backlogging. I talked about Then and Now. I talked about Zelda, Metroid, Mario, FF15, and Mini Nations. I think that's everything. I think that's everything about the show. So, let's talk about much worse things. Okay, hang on, we're gonna actually kill that music. We don't want that music. I just so let's just start with the worst. How many of you have not heard about this? I guess that's the easiest way to start this statement. How many of you have not heard about this? In my notes, no joke, in my notes, I literally just have this written down as EA is stupid. That's all I have written down to remind me of this news point. So for those of you not aware, EA has been pulled in front of British Parliament. To be clear, United Kingdom Parliament, to be 100% clear about this. And they have actually been having meetings in front of the board of... You know, I gotta be honest, I don't actually know which specific people these are. But it's politicians, and they are in front... It's an actual committee. And there are actually lawyers present and all that fun, wonderful stuff. I've actually already kind of said this, but I want to mention this here since this is actually the topic here, so forgive me for the repeat, for those of you who've already heard me say this. This is astonishingly stupid what EA has done here. And I'll talk about what they've actually done in just a moment. Don't worry, I've got a whole thing ready for it. Because... If EA went out and recorded a video, or talked to a press person during an interview, or released a tweet or an announcement, and they said what they said in this video, which is basically that we don't call them loot boxes, we call them surprise mechanics, and we do believe they are very ethical. That's the summary. Don't worry, you're going to hear the whole thing in a minute. I want you to actually see this. It's very important to me. But if they said that in a public forum, then you know what would happen? Nothing. People would laugh and just scoff, and a lot of people do videos about how stupid EA is, and we'd move on. I probably wouldn't even have a news bullet point on it. It would be in the random news section of my own show, and I'd move on, because it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. But this is not what EA has done. What EA has done this in front of the United Kingdom's Parliament, in front of actual politicians, in an actual committee, in presence of actual lawyers, as a part of legal record. Now that's much different and much worse. That is so much worse. I actually can't even put into words how much worse that is. If they are found... There's ways they could probably try to legally dodge this. I've actually mentioned them before. But if they do not successfully legally dodge this, then what they have just done is lied to the United Kingdom's Parliament. Do you know what happens when you lie on record, under oath, by the way, because that's how that works, to the frickin' Parliament? What? Yeah, this is bad. If they don't manage to fend this one off, this is bad. But what I really want to share, I know you've heard memes, you've heard the quotes. I want you to actually see it, because I bothered to go ahead and grab it. I bothered to go ahead and grab the footage, and I actually watched a decent chunk of this, which is where is it? It's right here. Boom. Okay, so because this is, by the way, funny fact, this is public record. So in addition to the fact that they have done this to the British Parliament, or the UK Parliament, or whatever the hell it is. This is a part of public record. So everyone knows what they've said. There we go. Let's center this a little bit more. Sorry, I'm just kind of capturing this off YouTube, as you can see here. So, and I quote...
You may not believe you have you may not have a legal duty of care. I think you'd agree that a company like yourselves should have a code of ethics.
Hold on. I just want to share something really quick. For those of you not aware, this is actual... I've both attended and been present to several of these before. And these are boring, okay? Like actual meetings of Congress, actual things. They're immensely boring. I just want that to be out there. So hang on, let's rewind a second. What he just said is, we believe it's incumbent on a company of your size and your value to have a code of ethics. So that's what he said, and to continue.
We've heard a lot of evidence in this committee from Dr. David Zendel, among others, that loot boxes are closely linked to problem gambling, particularly among adolescents.
So and again, I'm just going to repeat this really quick. I'm allowed to make fun and pull around. These are super boring. Interesting, if you're into that, and admittedly, I actually am, but super boring. Let's just be honest. These are not made for a viewing audience. So, damn it, I just responded to Valerian. I forgot what he said. He said that this committee has received a lot of evidence stating that these things are... you know what? Hang on. I'm just going to rewind.
Committee from Dr. David Zendel, among others, that loot boxes are closely linked to problem gambling, particularly among adolescents.
Okay, so loot boxes closely linked with problem gambling, especially amongst adolescents. Note his word choices here, by the way. This is another thing you got to do when you're in these sort of actual, official, no really in front of Congress kind of meetings. You have to choose your words pretty carefully.
Can I ask you, both companies, do you consider loot boxes to be an ethical feature of your games?
Can I ask you, both companies, he's referring to EA and Epic, do you feel that loot boxes are an ethical feature of your games?
Kerry?
Well, first, we don't call them loot boxes. I think that was...
Whatever term you wish to apply to them, do you consider them ethical?
So what we look at as surprise mechanics.
I'm sorry.
I think that was...
Whatever term you wish to apply to them, do you consider them ethical?
So what we look at as surprise mechanics. But I think it's important to look at this. So if you go to a I don't know what your version of Target is, but a store that sells a lot of toys, and you do a search for surprise toys, what you'll find is that this is something people enjoy. They enjoy surprises, and so it's something that's been part of toys for years, whether it's Kinder Eggs or Hatchimals or LOL Surprise. We do think the way that we have implemented these kind of mechanics, and FIFA, of course, is our big one, our FIFA Ultimate Team and our packs, is actually quite ethical and quite fun, enjoyable to people. We agree with the UK Gambling Commission, the Australian Gambling Commission, and many other gambling commissions that they aren't gambling, and we also disagree that there's evidence that shows it leads to gambling.
All right, hang on. I gotta interrupt real quick. Banned! Okay, continuing.
Instead, we think it's like many other products that people enjoy in a very healthy way, and like the element of surprise.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop there. This is only a 7-minute snippet. This whole thing is actually very long and very boring. But I want to dissect this a little bit, because this is just astonishing. Now, I've spent most of my life... Oh, it is much different, Loner, and I could explain why, but I'm not going to. I've spent most of my life, ever since I was a child, learning how to analyze people. Learning how to analyze the way they talk, their word choice, their stutter, the way they held themselves, everything about how a human being is conveying information to me, completely regardless of the words they're actually using, and then also in addition to the words they're actually using to me. Now, I point that out because this woman is in way over her head. So,
Well, first, we don't call them loot boxes. I think that was
Whatever term you wish to apply to them, do
so
you consider them ethical?
so, what she just did was she just started... So first of all, I want to point out there was a several seconds pause before she even started answering his question. So that was the line she was given. First of all, we don't actually call them loot boxes. We tend to refer to them as surprise mechanics, which is a feature that, and blah, 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 blah. That's the speech. That's the prepared speech that she's memorized. Now watch what happens when, because he just interrupted her. Whatever you want to call them, he said, right? He just, I can't do Scottish accent, please forgive me, but whatever you want to call them, he just said. So watch her face and watch how her word choice just bounces around as she's interrupted in the speech.
So what we look at as surprise mechanics.
So what we would add as surprise mechanics.
But I think it's important to look at this. So
And then she spent several additional seconds just trying, like, where the hell was I in the speech? Oh God, where was I in the speech? Yeah, it's a script. And then
if you go to
watch her face and watch her shoulders.
go to I don't know what your version of Target is, but a store that sells.
Notice how much more comfortable she is now.
Do a search for surprise toys. What you'll find is that this is something people enjoy. They enjoy.
She's even started doing mouth movements to try and make herself seem more natural, whereas before her face was effectively expressionless. She got right back on the script, and as soon as she did, she felt a lot more comfortable with where she was going and what she was doing. And I just felt like it was really worth analyzing that little tidbit, because first of all, that's actually really kind of gross. But second, and more to the point, it really helps to demonstrate how this is something that they are, as a corporation, on a firm party line. That they have no actual way of dealing with this from a personal level. Now, if you don't understand what I mean by that, let me put it to you this way. Hang on, let me get rid of this for a second. Hi, this is me. I'm in front of camera, live, okay? So, I could tell you, if you name a topic, I could tell you what I feel about that topic like that. Because I feel something about that topic. I have thoughts and opinions and emotions about that topic. Now, granted, I'm actually pretty good at improv. I've been good at improv since I was a kid. But, that being stated, I can just tell you my opinion on stuff because I have that opinion. It is my opinion. I can draw from that and say, Code of Honor is an awful episode. I mean, I could tell you right now about the nature of the director and how he was fired by Gene. I could tell you about how I feel that the episode was not actually intended to be a racist episode. It was kind of turned into that by Mr. Odsky. I'm kidding, Mr. Odsky. Sorry. I could tell you about how I feel like it was doing a massive disservice to Tasha Yar as a character. I could tell you all about how I feel it was doing a massive disservice to Picard as a character. I could tell you about how it introduced the Romulans, even in a state when they weren't actually supposed to be introduced yet, because they're really supposed to be the Ferengi, but the Ferengi weren't well represented, and so forth and so on. I can just do that naturally and smoothly because that's my opinion. Now, if I happened to be given a script, that's not my opinion. I have no feelings really about that. I have no personal investment in it. Or if I do, it is literally my job to supplement that in favor of the script. And that's the important part. Because what we just saw was a mouthpiece reading a party line, not a person answering a question. And do you understand the distinction? Thank you, Mr. Odsky. Really, much appreciated. Now, I don't know if you want to decide where that goes, if you want Mr. Funback to decide where it goes. But either way, let me know, and thank you very much. So in addition to the fact that they did this in a public area where everyone is going to be aware of this. Oh, he said Yoshi. Sorry, I didn't even see it. Didn't even see it. I'm a dummy. You got it, Mr. Odsky. Which I know I'm actually saying wrong. But I'm an idiot. Putting it towards Yoshi. Paid to speech. In addition to saying this something incredibly stupid thing publicly, in addition to the fact that they're using the party line that they are not wrong, in addition to the fact that they have no actual legs to stand on or not using any of the defenses they might be able to use here, they're also doing it in a way that the actual people present are visibly and demonstrably not comfortable with doing. Now, if you don't understand why that's relevant, I once again want to remind you that this is not reality that we're talking about. This is legality. And in legality land, if someone is responding in a certain way, I should rewind this. I don't know if this is true in Britain. I don't know if this is true in the UK. But in the States, it is possible. There are legal methods to say that person doesn't actually mean what they're saying. I believe they're being coerced, or I believe they're saying something that they don't actually mean or feel. I think that legally they should that everything they said should be stricken from the record, removed, and put over here, or at the very least have being stated under duress, that kind of a thing. And we can actually try to push to say either what you actually feel or just remove you from the hearing. They can do that here. Not now. And that's why I spent so much time showcasing how she responded to that question. And yes, by the way, of course I heard how the Scotsman scoffed at her answer. I think he's a Scotsman. I shouldn't say that. The gentleman scoffed at her answer. I'm sorry, what? That, by the way, is a natural answer of a human being who has an opinion. Whereas she was trying her hardest to not be a human being in that moment. Which is funny. And sad. This is bad. I hope EA gets slammed as hard as possible by this. I really do. Because this is one of the dumbest possible things they could have done. And I hate to say that. I hate to sound so vindictive. But when you put your hand on the train tracks and you look up and just wait for the train to come, you kind of got what's coming to you. Now, I do want to address some questions from the chat. First of all, she mentions Kinder eggs, which is actually illegal here in the States. Funny fact. There is a version of Kinder eggs here. And, that's fair, Pyman. I didn't actually think about that. There is a version of Kinder eggs here, which is not Kinder eggs at all, basically. But it's branded in a similar way. Yeah, the Kinder Surprise thing. And it's not a Kinder Eggs thing. So that might have been what she was referencing. It's entirely possible. I'm not sure. It's entirely possible that she was just an idiot. I know. Weird, right? Why is it illegal? I think it was because of some concerns with kids eating the toys inside or some stupid thing or other. I don't know. I'm actually not sure. To be completely honest with that. Choking hazard. Yeah, it was choking hazard. Okay, so apparently I'm right. Let's talk. So someone mentioned Magic the Gathering, and I do want to use that because some people have mentioned that as an analogy. Let me go ahead and say something that's going to sound strange. The idea of buying a box of random stuff is, in my opinion, not a bad idea. However, when I use the terminology loot boxes, that is not what I am referring to. You guys have probably heard me every now and again make a joke about how you can buy loot packs, lore packs. You can buy little lore packs that will give you lore currency, and that lore currency will allow you to buy pieces of lore. And once you get all 25 pieces of any given chunk of lore, you'll get a little, 30-second video describing exactly what that lore is. That's a loot box. A loot box is something that is more or less deliberately designed to be as predatory, and I want to stress that, as predatory as possible. As something that is actually designed to not give you what you want, and to make it look like you're almost there. You're just a little bit further, and you'll be able to make it. And if you really dump money on it, and I mean really dump money on it, you will actually get what you want. It is also possible you'll get it through simple random chance. Although since most loot boxes are digital, those random chance variables, those formulas, are a controlled factor. If you don't understand what I mean by that, that means that they have 100% total control over what you get out of each one of those loot boxes. It's not like... Gosh, what's a good example? I mean, it's not like Magic the Gathering cards, which are... Well, that's actually not a fair example. Okay. How about this? It is not like old gambling, as in when you actually would pull the wheel and they'd pull the thing and the wheels would spin, or let's just like poker, for example. You don't have control over poker if you're just playing some cards with a friend. You have no control over that. This is a better example. I'll use this as an example. But if you're playing video poker, if you're in front of a machine where there's actually a digital representation of thing, then now the company playing that poker game has 100% control over that poker game. They have a way of controlling the odds of which cards show up when, and so forth and so on. Because there is no such thing as true random when it comes to that kind of thing, right? Oh my god, Shadow Machine, that's insane. Now, the reason I had to walk that back on MTG is because in, I want to say like 2005 or something like that, MTG started actually using digital formulas to decide which cards go in which packs and whatnot. But let's go ahead and walk this back for a second. Let's say I buy a booster pack of Magic the Gathering. Now, what do I get out of that booster pack? Now, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I want to say I get something. I got 1 guaranteed rare, was it like 3 guaranteed uncommons, and then X amount of commons. And then I might also get 1 other card as a bonus. That is an occasional thing that happens. It will always be from a specific set. I'm buying from the core set or this expansion or whatever. And it will always be, that ratio. Oh yeah, you also get the land of the foil. That's true. I forgot about that. In other words, there's a fairly controlled... Okay, 9 commons. Like I said, I forget the number. It's been a long time since I've been a booster pack. There's a fairly controlled formula to that, basically. Now, what I mean by that is if I open a pack of cards from Magic the Gathering or any other... Well, I shouldn't say any other TCG. I can only speak for Magic the Gathering, personally. But if I open a Magic the Gathering card pack, there is actually a pretty high chance that at least several of the things in there will be things that I actually want. And I actually need to in order to be able to set up a deck or just want to make a deck of my own. It's also worth noting that, now this is dependent on the individual, but if you open a booster pack, there's pretty much a guarantee that, dependent on who you are, you will get something you want out of that. Now, I know what you mean. I know what you're thinking. What do you mean, Laura? Have you ever played booster drafts? Just to name one example. There's actually several variants on booster drafts, but the idea is you make a deck based on just opening some booster packs, and then you just play with a random deck. And there's a lot of ways to do that. There's some ways you just kind of hand wave away the mana costs because land is not a part of it. In some cases, you have a thing where you put together a deck based on, like, you pull a card and then you pass it to the left to another person, you pull a card, you pass it to the left. There's ways of doing this. It is a very I love doing drafts. I love doing booster drafts myself, Alex. It's one of my favorite things to do when it comes to MTG. But the point being, you get something pretty definitively from that. Now let's look at, just to use an example I know personally, Overwatch. So if you open a loot box from Overwatch, what do you get? Well, you have a guarantee of 5? I don't remember how many. 6? Commons. That's the guarantee. So instead of having the guarantee of 9 commons, however many uncommons, and 1 rare, your only guarantee is the 5 or 6, or whatever it is, commons. That's your only guarantee. It's the first change. Second change is you do have a chance, of course, to get randoms. In fact, you could get 6 rares if you wanted, or 6 legendaries. That is possible. However, again, a completely digitally controlled format. So, not exactly something that's particularly likely to actually happen. You might get... It's also worth noting that all of those things you get, all of their value is directly connected to the video game they're being played in. Now, what I mean by that is I still have my Magic the Gathering cards. They're actually right in that closet right there. And every now and again, it doesn't happen all that often, but every now and again I do actually pull those out and play this with a friend, because I can do that. Those cards will continue to have value to me until I die. How long do you think Overwatch is going to stay playable? Better question. See you around, Cloud of the Stars. Better question. How often do you think Overwatch's connection to its loot box stuff will be playable? Because it's within the realm of value. It's within the realm of possibility that Overwatch, you could keep playing Overwatch even after it's shut down. Just like you could play Asheron's Call right now, or Ultima Online, or Star Wars Galaxies. But will you be able to retain any of the stuff you actually bought? Probably not, because those things are attached to an account, which is part of a server that may or may not be gone. You understand why I'm going with this? So in other words, statistically speaking, the odds of the value of the items you have procured from those loot boxes retaining long term is amazingly low. Possible, I will grant, but astonishingly low. Then you add in this other little variable. One of the things I love about Magic the Gathering is that most of their decks are designed so that while there are some crap cards, there's always a bit of use, even for crap cards, right? I mean, I mentioned the aforementioned draft concept, which is fun to do, to try and make a deck out of crap cards. Or sometimes people like to do theme decks or challenge decks, trying to make it work in a way that works for them, right? Sense make. However, and yeah, the filler cards, exactly. When it comes to Overwatch, they of course have filler stuff that is a part of the loot boxes. But the problem is, thanks to the nature of Overwatch, you're actually much less likely to get any value out of those filler items that come out of that. You can get a voice clip, which you can hit periodically, which may or may not matter, and may or may not be for a character you got. You might get a skin, which you can spray paint on the wall, which you may or may not want, and may or may not be for a character you want. I guess that's not relevant. You kind of get where I'm going with this. Now, I'm going to stop here. I could keep making my point. To be clear, I don't think the booster pack idea is the perfect idea. I don't think it is completely ethical and completely morally acceptable. However, that being stated, I do think that booster packs are on a completely separate tier than what we see with the loot box crisis. Now, that is my opinion. But that's the point I've been trying to establish here. That these are over here, and these are over here. Counter-Strike skins. Some of those are worth thousands of dollars, and hopefully they will continue to be until that finally dies. Is it possible for a loot box to contain absolutely nothing? Okay, so... no? However, it is possible for a loot box to contain nothing but duplicates. And what happens when you get duplicates is they give you the currency. I referenced this earlier in a semi-joking manner. So you get these little dusts or little motes or whatever the hell it is. And if you turn in a few hundred or a few thousand of those, you can buy a specific item you want. So it's entirely possible to open a loot box and get nothing. But by the literal definition of the word, no. Is it coins for Overwatch? I don't remember, if I'm being honest. It was dust over in Hearthstone, for example. Hi, Javan. GDQ Hoyt. Now, Nescosta says, loot boxes are just a way for the company to get much more profit for putting out much less content. I mean, yeah. Hear me out for a second. This is part of why I keep using that word, predatory. Let's say I make a game. Now, let's just assume for a moment that this game, we'll call it Lore's Stupid Adventure of Bald Idiots. Now, you're playing Lore's Stupid Adventure of Bald Idiots, and I decide to put microtransactions into my game because I'm evil, stupid, and bald and an idiot. Now, let's say that these microtransactions allow you to buy skins, just straight. You drop $2 and you get the Arshian Gaia skin, and you can have the long blue hair, right? Or you drop $1 and you get a different colored undershirt, that kind of a thing, right? Now, from a purely corporate and financial perspective, what this means is I'm selling you a game and I'm generating a little bit of additional revenue that has basically a finite point. In other words, let me at least put it to you this way. He wouldn't be Little Billy. That would be the problem. In other words, from a corporate perspective, from a financial perspective, there is a finite amount of sales I'm going to get, right? There's a term for that. God, I'm trying to think of the term for it. Basically, there's an economic term for something where you only ever expect to get X number of sales out of an item. It's not like selling apples, right? There's no X amount of sales on apples. You're always going to have a market for apples. But for this kind of asset, once you hit this certain point, you're not going to sell any more sales. Not really. It's not on a level that matters. So what I have done with these microtransactions is I have extended that a little bit by basically adding another separate value. However, microtransactions also have a set value. At a certain point in time, everyone who is going to buy these microtransactions will have done so. And then no more sales will happen. So it's actually just another line of additional finite sales. Loot boxes will never run out functionally. Or at least it's incredibly statistically unlikely for loot boxes to run out. Now let's go back to Overwatch. Overwatch, there is a point at which you will have bought everything. Because one way or another, you are 100% guaranteed, as long as you keep plugging money down for loot boxes. Even if you get nothing but all commons and all repeats, eventually, mathematically, you will get enough bits or coins or whatever the hell they're called in order to buy all the pieces that you're missing. However, because of the nature of that, because I don't know it that well, Hazardous, because of the nature of it, that means that that finite line is way over here and far less statistically likely to actually happen. So in other words, people will keep spending money on loot boxes and keep spending money on loot boxes as long as the game keep going. This right here is why people are so upset about the terminology of games as a service. Because this is the exact point of games as a service. There are theoretically creative purposes behind the concept of games as a service. They're called MMOs. But from an economic and corporate perspective, the whole point of games as a service is to get rid of that finite point. To get rid of that termination point where they've gotten all their sales. They want the money to keep flowing in at a constant rate all the time. Loot boxes are one of the easiest and simplest ways to do that. Because they will ensure that you'll never actually have all that you want, statistically speaking. I shouldn't say never. You will probably never have all that you want, statistically speaking. And there will always be easy ways to add new stuff, like Shadow Machine just mentioned in chat. I can just add more skins. You thought you were done? There's more stuff you can buy. Oh, you want that one skin? Well, good luck. So from a corporate perspective, from an economic perspective, you can see why it is that companies have been pushing this kind of garbage so hard for the last several years. Because this is like a dream. And going back to what Noscosta said, you know how much this costs the actual publisher? You know how much this costs the company to do? Nothing! This is a joke. This is pennies. It costs relative pennies for them to do this. So, for what is effectively no additional cost, they gain a continuous source of additional money. Which, of course, goes back to what Hazardous just said. Of course they're going to try and die on this hill. This is a gold mine for them. Now, I'm not even talking about the psychological side of things. I don't actually want to talk about that, and honestly, we've already talked for an hour, and I've only got about 50 minutes left here, so... and I got other things to talk about. There is a whole degree of psychological manipulation, and I don't even know how to properly describe it without letting the disgust ooze out of my mouth. So we'll just leave it at, there's a whole level of psychological manipulation that is on display here to try and get you to keep buying, to try and get you to keep playing, to try and get you to keep dumping money into this recurring spending thing. Exploitation, that's a good word. I like that word. There's a consistent amount of exploitation here. You know why casinos get away with it? Because they have a stupid amount of money and power. That's why casinos get away with it. And even casinos are heavily regulated, at least here in the States. You know, what's actually really sad to me is I know several people who don't have issues with loot boxes personally, because they look at it and they say, and this is related to what Anthony Drafter said, they look at that and say, well, I'm not getting that. Like, that would be cool to get that ship, but I'm not going to get that ship. I know that. Why bother? I'll use another parallel here. And this is the last thing I'll talk about this, I swear, because I really do want to get out of these other topics. McDonald's. How many of you have ever seen the McDonald's Monopoly game? It's been going on since the 90s. One of the biggest tricks McDonald's used to do was they would give away, usually Boardwalk. They would actually make it so that Boardwalk pieces were, or is it Boardwalk? Hang on, I think I'm using the wrong term. Hang on. Let me just look up a Monopoly board really quick. Hang on. No, I need a larger picture so I can actually read it. Here we go. View, image, zoom in. This is not it. Oh my god, I just want to know the name of it. You think this would be hard? Okay, so... This is a custom... Why do they keep getting custom Monopoly road things? Alright, whatever. There's the 2 blue ones, okay? There's the 2 blue ones right at the end, right? Now... Oh, okay, apparently they've changed this, but let me finish what I was talking about. Back in the day, Boardwalk was the one they made very common. It was Park Place that was the rare one. Now, I bring that up because you only need 2. And the prizes for getting those 2 were very, very useful. They were awesome. They were like a new car or $1 million or something amazing, right? Now, again, this would actually have been 94 or 95, I forget which. But in one of those years, it was very easy to get a hold of Boardwalk, which is the more expensive one and the rare one. If you've actually played Monopoly, you know that's one of the most expensive and powerful things on the board to get a hold of. It's the one that's right before go. So lots of people would get Boardwalk and be like, oh, I'm so close, and would buy more stuff. Park Place, the more common one, was the one they made rare. And you see where we're going with this. The idea is to manipulate people, to give them that idea of, oh, if only you gave me a little bit more money, you'd be so close to a victory. You could have all this stuff. You could have exactly what you want, or this $1 million, or this super amazing skin, or this one rare card, or whatever. If you just spent a little more money on it. That's predatory. And again, it's basically free. Let's move on. let's move on. Where's music? I need music. By the way, this is all unrelated to the scandal that McDonald's had about their Monopoly thing, which some of you probably have heard about. Basically, some people who actually worked at McDonald's were hoarding the winning pieces and, like, giving them away to friends and family, and it was a whole mess. Alright, how many of you guys knew about the Stardock suit? God, I can never say that word. It was a lawsuit between Stardock and the original creators of Star Control. Anyone know about this? Believe it or not, this is actually good news. I wanted to share this because this actually made me happy. This made me smile. If I could find my notes on it. Where the hell are my notes? Here we go. Found them. So this is a good thing. So what happened several years ago, Ford and Ricci, I have no idea how to pronounce his name, and the company of Stardock were involved in a lawsuit over who owned the specific copyrights and trademarks over the Star Control series. It was actually a really big mess, and to be honest, it was one of those really rare situations where I couldn't pick a side personally. Now, I've actually talked about it on my show before. Basically, both sides had some valid points, and both sides were kind of being dicks about the whole thing. So the lawsuit's over. Now, I want to read this, if you'll forgive me, because this is kind of cool, and I wish more of this happened in life. Like I said, little affirmation thing here. And I quote, this is Stardock, "We solved this problem like most problems, with booze and bees. The first thing I did was I sat back and said, what is the common ground..." Oh, hang on, actually, I'm sorry, rewind. So this is now switching to the perspective of Ricci, I don't know how to pronounce his name. The first thing I did was I sat back and said, what is the common ground I genuinely have with Brad? And that is that I want to know how to raise bees. Honest to God, I've had this long-standing goal to learn all medieval villager skills, and this has been on my list. And I thought, okay, this is something we can bond over and talk about. Even if this whole thing doesn't work out in the settlement, we can have a good conversation about bees. So during the course of this whole thing, they actually went, this is not even a joke, they actually went and got lunch and talked about beekeeping, which, funnily enough, Brad Wardle, who is with Stardock, actually was into beekeeping and making honey and mead. So the two sat down and bonded over bees. Over shared interests. Over hobbies that they both cared about. Over shared enthusiasm. They were both geeks, in other words. So as a result, they started talking about the actual legal thing. And they started working out and hammering out a legitimate settlement, because the two of them, the two groups, actually managed to bond over mutual enthusiasm. And I think that's awesome. I really do. Like, you probably can't tell by how much I'm gushing over here and trying not to solve. But yeah, they actually solved their differences by talking. Now, the legal men did have to come in and settle things. And I actually have the full list of the settlement options here. So both lawsuits, because it was actually plural, because of course it was, were dismissed with prejudice. On the off chance you've ever heard of that terminology, what that means... Oh, I just realized the music's still out. Sorry, I turned it up for the video. What that means is that this can't happen again. Whoops. It's gone, and it's not coming back. They no longer have the ability to sue each other over this. Both sides will settle their own attorney's fees. Completely separate. Stardock will get to use the Star Control name, and will continue to be able to develop sequels and DLCs. Ford and Ritchie... I'm going to start calling it that. Ford and Ritchie will get to continue to develop their own Urquan Master sequel, which now will be renamed to something called, related to the Star Control thing. The Star Control Origins universe, which will continue as a disconnected universe from the original universe. So they're going to both basically kind of keep branching off from each other. The Star Control Origins universe is going to be its own timeline, and the Urquan universe is going to be its own timeline. So this one over here, the Urquan one, will take into account the original games. Ricci will continue to work with the Stardock team to help write the Origins universe, to help develop this second universe, this AU. All of the arguments about who owns which rights to which copyrights and which trademark have all been... they're gone. All of that's been settled. The 3 original Star Control games will continue to be sold in whatever storefronts they want to, and the revenue from those original games being sold will be split evenly between Stardock and Ford and Ritchie. No licensing money has changed hands. Now, hang on. I gotta pause for a moment. So all this is great, right? Now, I want to mention this because legal settlements are things that are part of legal law. Like, if they decided to violate this settlement, that would be cause for bringing this back to court, right? So I want to stress that because this is part of the legal settlement between these lawsuits. Brad Wardle of Stardock must furnish Paul Ritchie with honey from Wardle's apiary. And Paul Ritchie must furnish Brad Wardle with mead brewed from Wardle's honey. No joke. Now, one last thing I want to share before we move on. Settlements are not, as a part of law, a part of public record. In fact, if you've heard this in the past, most likely what you've heard is such and such and such and such settled, and it's now over. And that's all you've heard. Because 99.9% of the time, settlements are under the table, because they are not required to be a part of public record. It was decided by both teams, by the Stardock team and by Paul and Ritchie, to make this settlement public record so that people would be aware of it. And that's awesome. I don't even have anything to really add to this, honestly. This is just a great story I wanted to share with you guys. And I wanted to help explain why it was so awesome. Now we get into some gray. Let's kind of hammer these last 2 points here because I want to talk about Soy Story before I run out of time. What's first? Stock market. Right. So we're gonna go right back to bad really quick, okay? Now that I've got you all heartwarmed, let's tell you how horrible humanity is. No, I'm kidding, but I do want to mention this because okay. I have an image. I've prepared for this. That's what I want to start with. Okay, so you see this? This is roughly the last month. Is actually close to 3 months. This is the last 3 months of Nintendo's stock performance. Okay, I just got this picture this morning, so this is extremely up to date. Now, you see this? This is E3. Now, as a gamer, as a geek, why would Nintendo's stock plummet during E3? Oh, for the record, in case you can't tell, that's a 2.4 point drop. 2.4 drop in stock, which in stock terms is extremely large. Now you'll notice it has since somewhat recovered. Now what's funny about this, yeah, everyone in chat's already saying it, but what's funny about this is, considering how well Nintendo did, and how many new games they showcased, and how wonderful their showing was, and how many new things that people are super excited about, you'd think that Nintendo stock would have done the opposite of this. Instead, it plummeted. Now, I decided to look into the specific reasons of why. Now, they didn't announce a new Switch console, so that was part of it. They didn't announce that they were doing any loot boxes, which was part of it. They didn't announce much in the way of mobile, which is part of it. But there was one really big point, and this is why everything about publicly owned companies and the problem of the quarterly return is wrong. Because what happened is during E3, and this is right in the middle of this plummet here, during E3 they actually had a discussion where they talked about that's over a day, Anthony. That is 1 day for that plummet right there, to give you a little bit of perspective. They talked about how they wanted to not push their employees to crunch time. They wanted their employees to actually to have a good and safe work environment, and they didn't want to force them to shove a game out the door before it was ready. Now, they also mentioned how Nintendo has had this policy for some time, that Nintendo's actually been pretty anti-crunch for some time. And because of the fact that they didn't want to actually start doing this just because they wanted to hit, and this is important, because they wanted to hit a specific release window to make sure they had a specific amount of sales amounts for a quarter, that they would not be pushing this. And the investors hated that. Every single investment firm, every single economic site I saw was bashing Nintendo for daring to push back the Animal Crossing release. As I mentioned, there were some other things involved, like the lack of loot boxes and lack of a new hardware announcement. But the one thing that every economic site I perused, this is what brought this to my attention, by the way, the one thing that every economic site I perused talked about consistently was how dare they push this back. That just means that, I forget which quarter, but the fiscal quarter is going to have terrible returns. Oh my god, dump Nintendo now. And this caused the stock to plummet over the course of that day, give or take. So just to make sure that I really want to make sure that we're 100% on this, Nintendo decided that it was more important to make sure that their employees were taken care of and that they put out a finished product instead of hitting a quarterly return sales figure. And they were bashed by that by multiple economic sites and reporters and economists and all that fun stuff. Now, I was going to report on this last week, because obviously this had already happened last week. The reason I went ahead and decided to show you the full branch of the last 3 months here is because you'll notice the stock has partially recovered. Because of course it did. Because stock drops are never really a big problem. And I wanted to bring it up because the stock dropping itself isn't really the relevant point for me. Stocks go up and down all the damn time. Like that's incredibly normal. That is astonishingly normal for stocks to go up and down. No, what I wanted to point out is the mentality of how wrong Nintendo was for doing what they did that was shared by so many people within economic circles. That's what pissed me off. I honestly don't even think I need to add anything to that. I don't know what else to add to that. Anywho, moving on. Speaking of Nintendo, now I'm going to piss Max Time off. Not on purpose, but I'm pretty sure he's about to get upset at me. What time is it? We're getting... So, where's the thing? I actually pulled it up here. There it is. So there's a gentleman who I don't know their name, obviously, and why would I? But it's a person who is usually referred to as Polar Panda, who did a very good job of leaking several E3 things this year. Polar Panda, in the middle of E3, as E3 was starting to get ready to go, got notified by a lawyer that they had a cease and desist. The specific information was that they were disallowed from posting any private trade secrets from Nintendo Co. Ltd. So they could post things from other companies, but not from Nintendo. It was confirmed through various sources that they actually had this person's real name, and they found their real outfit and location and blah, 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 and were able to be like, hi! And thus sent them after that. So they decided not to post any news or leaks about Nintendo's E3 stuff. It is worth noting that this exact person had posted several correct leaks about E3. So in other words, that these were actual leaks, not mere speculation. Now that's important. Now let's go ahead and start by the obvious. Let's just start with some groundwork. Leaks are bad. How bad they are is dependable, but I think most people would agree that leaks are bad. And Nintendo actually reaching out and hunting this person down to legally prevent them from leaking is probably a bit of an overreaction, if we're being honest. We got our two ground levels here. The reason I wanted to actually discuss this is because I feel like this is a legitimate topic that could be had. Because what are you supposed to do in this situation? I want to read something real quick to show a little bit of perspective on this. I've got it right here. So this is Naoki Yoshida. Okay, direct quote. Generally speaking, leaking information is the worst thing you can do. There are two thoughts behind this. With our 3 fan festivals as well as our patch updates, we tried to lay out elements that would surprise our players. We want to bring an encounter that people might not have imagined. It's very important to us to provide that surprise enjoyment. So leaking information is taking away that enjoyment and ruining that initial contact and emotion we want our players to experience. So it is unacceptable and unforgivable. The other reason is it ruins the efforts of the development team. We have a few hundred people working on this daily, and when the spoiler comes out, it destroys what they worked for. As somebody responsible for that development team, there are simply no words for me to describe how unfortunate that is. It is extremely frustrating. Square Enix as a whole does its due diligence and takes all incidents of such leaks, such as this, very seriously. Now, that was Square, obviously. But it's a related point because I wanted to mention it to get across the idea of the mentality of anti-leak. Now, Max Time already disagrees with me. He says leaks are a gray area. I don't agree, but I will agree that leaks are at least a dark gray area. I can never think of a situation when it comes to fiction, I want to add that, when it comes to video games and movies and television shows and books, and I guess plays maybe, I don't know. When it comes to the consumption of fiction, I can never personally think of a situation in which a leak is a good thing. I can think of situations where a leak is worse, right? Is bad or awful or worse or terrible and various gradients of bad. But I can't think of any situation when it's a good thing, personally. Imagine for a moment if you are someone who is, trying to actually release something, and you want it to be a big surprise announcement. And then a week before, someone's like, hey! It's like, oh, Okay? Now, a good company will roll with the punch. We've actually seen this a few times. I can't think of any examples. But a good company will roll with the punch. They will be like, yeah, no, there's our announcement. Woo! Now, this is why I say that there's a degree of gradients on the bad of a leak. Because, for example, if they leak Link's Awakening is coming out on the Switch, well, then that's not really a huge deal. If they leak that it's his sled, and I'm using that very specifically, then that's a horrible kind of a leak. Now, if Arathrobo leaks that I really like Yoshi's Crafted World, well, that's more of an acceptable one. Thank you very, very much, Arathrobo. As everyone, as always, much appreciated. Thank you very much, sir. Yeah, Wrath of the Lich King was leaked. You're right. That was an example of this exact kind of situation here. Obviously, I feel like Nintendo could have dealt with this better. Personally, what I would have done if I was Nintendo is I would have reached out to the person and said, legally, by the way, I would reach out to this person and say, hey, who's your source? Because that's a legal thing that is within Nintendo's power to do. To basically call upon them to reveal their source or to take the full damages of legal action themselves. In other words, it's a threat, but it's a threat that has no impetus on you as long as you cooperate, if that makes any sense. In other words, you owe up to your sources, and we now have it in legal writing that we leave you alone. If you don't owe up to your sources, we're going to take you to court. Make sense? And then, of course, you go and you find the actual sources and you deal with them. Because that's the real problem here. It's not people like this random guy on Twitter. Well, yeah, I assumed you wouldn't think in that direction, Max Time. I mean... But yeah, the real problem is because there's another problem related to this, which I also wanted to mention in brief. The other problem is, for lack of a better way to put it, leak culture. In other words, when leaks gain a lot of attention, positive attention, and then other people want to also leak or get more tempted to do so when they might not have otherwise been. Kind of culturally leaning towards leaks being cool, right? Being something that's okay, acceptable. I've mentioned before that some people need to go ahead and, roll with leaks, or some companies need to just roll with the leaks because it's already happened. But at the same time, you can kind of understand how that would encourage future leaks, which could then lead to actual issues. Like, let me use a direct example, Kingdom Hearts 3 being completely released in a full version before the game was out. You can see how there's a line of acceptability there, which is kind of what I'm mentioning. An officially mandated leak isn't really a leak in any sense of the word. An officially mandated leak isn't... I mean, they call it a leak, but it isn't. That's marketing at that point. That's them officially being like, hey, I'll agree with the Ryan Reynolds point. I will agree with that. Although there's some behind-the-scenes stuff I haven't researched on that, but I'll give you that point. So... you could see why, on the one hand, I'm actually kind of with Nintendo on this. As a creator, I don't want my stuff leaked. As a company, I want to make sure that my house is in order. Like I said, I don't want to encourage leaks. I don't want that to be a normal thing. I don't want to be like, yeah, this is cool, and lead to the escalation that eventually happened, like I said, just this year with Kingdom Hearts 3. But, at the same time, I do think Nintendo just... And calling an end to it was not really the best possible move. I can see why they did it. And I can tell you exactly why they did it that way, because I looked into this. They did it that way because it was the quickest thing they could do. They slammed this down on this person while they were still leaking stuff at E3, while E3 was still getting ready to go. So they wanted to slam on this person legally very quickly. So doing the whole thing I mentioned would have taken a little bit more time. So they wanted to just deal with it and just be end with it. You can see the problem. Now, of course, that short-sighted thing means that there are now people at Nintendo who are leaking things, and they don't know who those people are. I mean, I can see why you'd say that, Jovan. You know how I can see why you say that, Jovan? Because I've played Anthem. It is worth noting that there is, in my opinion, no real good solution to this whole situation. Some companies have gone to absolutely ludicrous ends to try and prevent leaks from happening. I actually have one example for you. And I hate to pseudo-spoil, but I think this is a relatively safe spoiler to give. So, Empire Strikes Back. If you ever read up on that, if you ever look into that, even a casual viewer of Star Wars probably knows at least some of the extents to which they went to keep the big reveal of Empire Strikes Back a secret. Anybody who's really studied the in-depth making of Empire Strikes Back knows they went way out of their way. They went to paranoid levels in order to make sure that didn't release. And by all accounts, they succeeded. Nobody saw that coming. Now, that was a different time. That was before the days of the internet and instant media. But I only bring that up as an example of the kind of extents sometimes companies will go to prevent these things from happening. Now, Wrath of Khan had a leak, which is a funny one. And what they did was they adjusted the script to kind of diffuse the leak. Not everyone really has the option of doing that, but it was a very talented and very creative way of dealing with it. I'll give them that. Now, I kind of think that a combination of Javan and Zygmus's idea is not a bad way of dealing with this. Basically, if there's something you really want to stay quiet about, go ahead and do official leaks. In other words, not leaks. In other words, quiet marketing. And just release nonsense information. Stuff that doesn't really mean anything, or stuff that doesn't really spoil anything. Just be like, hey, look, we're working on a game. This game has puppets in it, or something like that. This person is working on this 3D model. Just little stuff like that, kind of getting that information out there and basically trying to be ahead of the curve, functionally, to try and control the environment at that point. What Kojima's been... I mean, that's fair. Kojima does release a lot of nonsense. So, Kojima's attitude is different. What Kojima does is he releases nonsensical games, so it doesn't matter what's leaked because you don't know what to make of it. I'm just kidding, but you get the idea. I also agree that I've said this so many times. I understand, Plenty. I hope he's doing well soon. I've said this so many times. Companies need to work with fans more. It's not that out of bound for a company to reach out to a known leaker who has done actual proper leaks and say, hey, so you want to work with us on this? And you will allow us, or rather we will allow you, under binding of agreement, to leak stuff. We'll just have a say in what you release. Right? I mean, there's other ways that companies can reach out to fans, too. Whatever. That is true, Zygmus. That's also part of why I'm so against Star Citizen, is because I know how much they've been bungling it. But anyways, let's move on. We have 31 minutes left. What's our timer? What do we got? What's the next point? Toy Story's 4. Yeah, we could do that. And now I know that you hate me forever. Yeah, it's 31 minutes and 4 seconds to GDQ. I've got a timer up now. So, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. Spoilers, 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 spoilers. Spoilers! All the spoilers! All the spoilers. Spoilers, spoilers. What's next after this? GDQ for a week is what's after this. So. Spoilers. Spoilers. Rosebud was his sled all along. No. Come on. Everyone pour out. Let me do my whole go ahead and non-spoilery, non-mention-y thing. Go watch the film. It's a great film. No, I'm serious. The best praise I could give to the film is immediately after finishing watching it, I wanted to watch it again. Yes, Venters. I'm not even joking. I wanted to go right back and get another ticket and watch it again. It was awesome. Whether it's better than 3 or not, I'm not sure. I'd have to analyze the 2 back to back. That's a very difficult question. I think it was better than 1 and 2. Absolutely. Just heads and shoulders above 1 and 2 for me. Which probably says something about where I hold 3 on that list. What's funny is they showed a brief trailer for Onward, something like that. The new Pixar film, which is coming out next year. And both Third and I were like, well, we'll see how good this Pixar film is, and we'll use that to decide whether or not we want to see the next one. So we want to see the next one. Of course, Frozen 2 is coming out this year. That's not really Pixar, but, you know, whatever. We'll see that one, too. We'll see where they're going with that one. That's enough time. So, how many of you realized it was Keanu Reeves who was playing the Canadian action figure guy? You'll notice I am not raising my hand on that one. Because I didn't. I was like, God, it sounds so familiar. Oh my gosh. That sounds so... Who is that? Keanu Reeves is just everywhere these days. I don't even mind. Let me just go ahead and say, and you can make fun of me if you want to. I don't mind. Because I am more than man enough to admit that this movie made me cry 4 times. I actually started keeping track at a certain point, because it was just like, oh. And as usual, they started out right at the beginning by doing what Pixar always does, and ripping my frozen dead heart out, throwing it on the ground, and beating it to death with a spiked club. Very typical Pixar. But they did it very well, in my opinion. God. So we finally got to find out what happened with Bo Peep. Oof. Just, oh my God. Anyways. But before I move any forward, I also want to say that Key and Peele were much funnier than I thought they'd be. I have a weird opinion on Key and Peele, personally. I do actually like some of their stuff, and then I really don't like all of the rest of their stuff, if that makes any sense. When they're funny, they make me laugh quite a bit. When they're not funny, well, when they're not funny to me, I'm just like, okay, come on, let's go. But pretty much every scene they were in made me laugh, especially... There's a bit where they have to get the Keyblade key. It's a Kingdom Hearts key from the old lady. So they're discussing their plans. It's like, okay, I know what we're going to do. And then it cuts to a shot of the old lady walking down the aisle. And all of a sudden, the two just come out of nowhere and just start attacking her and beating her up. It's not, we'll destroy her. And then it cuts back to them. And Buzz is just staring at them like, no, we're not doing that. Okay, that's cool. We've got another idea. Maybe we'll try this other idea. Oh, okay, what's the other idea? So then it cuts to the old woman walking down. And all of a sudden, like a ball rolls by her. She's like, oh, what's that? She goes into the corner. And then they attack her and just start getting her. And Buzz is like, no, we're not doing this. Okay? We're not doing this. Okay. What if we try this other strategy? What's the other strategy? Well, then it cuts the old woman walking along, closes up the shop, gets in her car, drives home, takes a nice bath, cuts back to them. Is this story going anywhere? Shut up, we're almost there. Cuts back to the old woman. Old woman tucks in for the night. I'm sorry. Tucks in for the night. And she's laying there, asleep. And then you slowly see the toys rise from behind her, and you see where this is going. I'm sorry, as is obvious from the fact that I'm not even able to tell the story without laughing. I thought it was pretty funny. They also had a really good mid-credit scene. What should we do next? I've got an idea. I'm sorry. Then they there's this guy who's an asshole. I'm just going to say it that way. And they just turn into giant versions of themselves, breathing fire and shooting lasers at him as they're chasing him through the carnival, just stomping down to get back to him. and he's running away screaming, begging for his life. And then it cuts back to them, and for the first time we see them actually describing the story, and they're like... One of the things that I enjoyed most about the Toy Story series in general is how it's always been a story about fatherhood. We have seen in almost every Toy Story to date some aspect of being a parent. I say father, I shouldn't... Being a parent is more accurate than being a father. I say father because Woody is our main central character. We saw that in 1, we saw that in 2. 3 was all about letting go. That was one of the biggest points of 3, was being able to... Andy is going off to college, right? And so Andy had to let go, but also, more to the point, Woody had to let go of Andy and then switch over to Bonnie. So this film takes another interesting take on the idea of parenthood, and one that really hit me really hard, I'll be completely honest with you guys, because Bonnie doesn't notice Woody at all. How many of you know what it feels like to really care about someone who doesn't notice you're there at all? I do. I'll go ahead and admit that. What I mean by that is it's one thing to be disliked. It's one thing to be hated by someone. It's one thing to have someone who just, oh God, what are you doing here? Go away. It is an entirely separate thing. That's something you can deal with. That's something you can process. It's far different to have someone you care a great deal about who barely notices you exist. Now, I imagine most of you are probably thinking in more of a romantic light when I mention this, but I am specifically, again, referring to the concept of being a parent. Because there's a certain point in our lives as parents where we get to a point where our children are just interested in other things. I mean, you've seen that, haven't you? Not only in real life, but I'm sure you've at least seen that in fiction. How many times have you seen the cliche where the father or the mother comes in and is like, hey, what's going on, kiddo? You want to go hit the park later? And the kid's just like, that kind of a thing, right? It is a thing that happens. In an ideal world, the kids go into that phase and then come back out of it at a certain point. But that's exactly what that's exactly what Woody goes through with regards to Bonnie. Bonnie doesn't notice Woody at all. There are several, and as usual, Pixar's directing team is completely on point. There are several entire scenes where they showcase that Bonnie, basically looks right where Woody is and doesn't notice or acknowledge him in any way. I'll give you a specific example. There's one scene where she finds her backpack again, and she digs into the backpack, and she's like, oh, Forky! And Forky is right next to Woody. So she grabs Forky, runs out, and is super excited about Forky. Doesn't even mention Woody. That's the level of ignoring I'm mentioning. But what I really like is the early film, honestly the whole film, really made it clear that to Woody, that doesn't matter. It hurts, certainly. It hurts, and it makes him... It's an emotionally damaging thing. But he doesn't stop caring or trying. The first 20 minutes of the film is Woody going way out of his way to take care of Bonnie. Right at the beginning of the film, there's this bit where Bonnie goes to kindergarten for the first time. And everyone insists no toys. It's okay, no toys are allowed. Woody sneaks into her backpack to watch over her, to take care of her at kindergarten. And something about that just made me want to cheer a little bit. Because the only reason Woody was capable of doing that is he was the toy that nobody would notice. And so he's watching, and you know what kindergarten was like. Of course you don't. You probably haven't been to a kindergarten anytime recently. Young kids tend to be very shy and very clique-based. I'm sure you would remember at least some of that from some of your childhood, right? You're the outsider, and you have no idea where to go or what to do, right? There's a room of kids, they're all at a table, they're all chatting with each other. You're over here. Where do you go? What do you do? And there's that moment of just, and of course, as extremely social creatures that we are, it is your inclination to try and be a part of some of that, at least it might be. So what do you do? Well, so what happens, Bonnie sits down at a separate table by herself, and another kid walks over, and she's like, hi, Like, you can just see the smile. The directing was so good on this film. Hey, yeah, hi, And the kid completely ignores her, grabs her art supplies, and leaves with them. So, Woody helps her. She builds Forky. There's a bit of a comedy section where Forky constantly insists that he's trash. There's some existential world-building questions that are basically not answered at all. Oh, now, actually, it's funny. Mike Romano says, why are you always the outsider, never the insider? Because when you first enter a social group, you are by definition the outsider. I actually know full well what it feels like to be both an outsider and an insider. Because what I usually did, I was the kid who got along with everyone. That's always been my thing. So I would go there and I'd be shy and worried. And what I would do is I'd watch for like the one person who would show interest in me. I'd be like, figure out what they're interested in, talk about it, chat about it, work my way into the group, and I would be part of the inside. And you know what my job was from then on? And I'm not even making this up. My job was to watch for new outsiders and to welcome them in. When I was in 4th grade, I was good friends with 2 kids, Joel and Vincent. They're both awesome people. I still remember them very fondly. And over the course of the next 4 years, as we went to school in the same areas, that clique slowly grew because I kept inviting people into it. Anyways, so he takes care of her, and Forky is having this existential crisis. Forky leaves, they go to this, and there's this really great section where they basically summarize the events of Toy Story 1 and Toy Story 2 as, haha, Mr. Funbags. You don't have the right hair, first of all. And they basically bond in a montage. It's a really cool scene. But what's really awesome is Forky mentions that one of the things that he really likes is being part of trash. That he explains why trash is so welcoming to him. Woody then latches onto this and explains, well, that's what Bonnie is. And she said, wait, I'm Bonnie's trash? I'm trash to Bonnie? And and Woody's like, yes. And Forky's like, oh my god, I feel so bad. I need to get back to her right now. Then the film does something interesting. So let's take a step aside here for a moment. Toy Story 1's villain wasn't really a central focus of the film. A lot of Toy Story 1's focus was actually on the Buzz-Woody dynamic, not on the main antagonist of the film, which was the kid. The kid was basically a guest antagonist who then bowed right back out. In many ways, Woody was actually the antagonist of the first film. The second film had 2 antagonists. One was the Collector, who was basically just a sleazeball, and I can't remember his name, but the Prospector guy, right? Who was far more typically villainous, but not really developed as a character in any substantial way. The third film had Hitler. Just, oh my god. Like, I've said it before, Toy Story, I love Toy Story 3. It's one of my favorite Pixar films. But that is an astonishingly dark film. Oh my goodness. And so we had, the strawberry-smelling bear, who was just this nightmarishly, horrifically, unrepentantly, unforgivably evil character. A very, very typical Type 4 villain. So when they introduced the villain... Oh, yes, Max Time, yes. We're talking reprogramming. We're talking... I don't know what to call it. Tiered slavery. You'll be better treated if you oppress the other slaves. That kind of thing. It's really dark and wonderful, and I love it. Anyways, so that was the villain of the third film. He gets a horrible end, of course. Then we cut to 4. Now, 4 was interesting, because if you're paying attention, we've had a Type 1, a Type 3, and a Type 4 villain amongst the first 3 films. Funnily enough, the only type of villain not presented is Type 2, which is the sympathetic villain. Toy Story 3 was astonishingly dark. Toy Story 4 is the exact opposite. It is amazingly uplifting. It is astonishingly hopeful. Even the villain, who comes across as manipulative and basically a mafia don, isn't. She is very well fleshed out. She has a lot of characterization that goes throughout the course of the film, and she is very sympathetic. And in the end, she basically just stops being villainous, because she never wanted to be villainous to begin with. It's kind of a cool direction to go, in my opinion. Don't mistake me, I like good, dark films as much as anybody else, but if you, immediately in the wake of 3, it makes sense that they would go in this direction with it. So they introduce her, Gabby Gabby, a doll who desperately wants to have those moments of being loved by a kid. The whole film, again, parenthood, the whole film hammers in that point over and over and over. They even literally call it, "I have a kid." That's how they phrase it. And so they emphasize how it's harsh and it's horrible and eventually you have to say goodbye, but it's the best thing in the world. And that's a point the film hammers in over and over again. So Gabby Gabby desperately wants to have a kid. And so she basically goes for this. She wants this voice box that Woody has to repair her own voice box, because that's the last piece she needs to really be accepted by this one kid that she just, oh my gosh, I can't wait to be adopted by her. It'll be wonderful. It'll be amazing. So you can already see where this is going, right? Anyone can predict this a million miles away. So there's a lot of action, a lot of fun things, great set pieces. One of the things I like is the terrain was more varied in this film. Toy Story 1, by necessity, was entirely located within, 3 areas in the whole film. Toy Story 2 varied a little bit, but mostly was still focused in, a small number of areas. Toy Story 3 roamed around a little bit, but Toy Story 4 actually has several set pieces within this area that they constantly bounce the camera around, which actually worked very well in my opinion. And they one of the other things I like is they keep emphasizing the teamwork aspect of what toys have to do in order to accomplish basic tasks that we could be able to do, like, for example, opening a window. They have to work together and do this whole thing just to be able to open a window. It's really good stuff. Anyway, so they have this whole action section I'm just kind of bouncing over. There's good stuff. It's all good stuff. And I want to pause here to comment that I think this film, more than most of the previous Toy Stories, with the exception of 3, was designed for people my age. That being said, like any good Pixar film, it still appeals to children. Fun fact, I made a point of glancing at the audience as we were heading in because we were kind of late. And about half the audience were people my age, and about half the audience were people more like this age. And both groups liked it. Anyways, so they reach out to Gabby Gabby, they give her the voice box. The girl just tosses her aside like trash. Now, what happens here, this whole time, they're just trying to get Forky back to Bonnie, because Forky is a safety blanket for Bonnie. Let's just put it as simply as we can. Now, Woody can't let it go at that. Woody sees Gabby Gabby and is just like, and reaches out to her and is like, "I'm so sorry." And Gabby Gabby, who at this point has stopped any level of villainy whatsoever, is just completely inconsolable. She's almost catatonic because of the level of the rejection she's had, which I imagine some of you know what that feels like too. A lot of personal notes in this film, tons of them. So Woody reaches out to her and is like, "Look, there are other kids out there." And just reaches out a hand. It's this great scene. So Gabby Gabby goes with them, and I'm building up to a point, because this point hit me like a ton of bricks. So a lot of the action is happening around a town that is having a carnival. By the way, quick anecdote. And I can't believe this is true, but it is. While this was happening, there was actually, no joke, an actual carnival going on just down the street from the theater I was at. Same type of carnival, the mobile, the ones where you pack up into a truck and move. Same thing. It was just hysterical timing. I just wanted to share that real quick. Anyways, so I almost was like, "Hello, is there any toys around here that need a home?" No, I needed to get home, and toys aren't real. But anyways, point being, I just thought that was hilarious. So during this carnival, the toys are trying to get back to the RV truck, because Bonnie's basically on vacation here. They see a little girl. I'm sorry, this is hitting me again. I've been that little girl in this moment, because I guess that's a weird sentence. There's this little girl who is hiding, basically kind of not quite behind, but just to the very back end in the shadows of one of the stalls, of one of the tents. And she's huddled together, and she's shaking a little bit, and she's crying. She's lost. And that's what I mean when I say I've been that girl. I have been at a large, loud event and had no idea where I was, and had no idea where I was going, and I just kind of defaulted to find a hole and hide in it. I've done that. I've been that. More than once, actually. And so I saw that, like I said, that just hit me like a ton of bricks. Because that little girl is just saying, oh God, it's okay, here, let's find your parents. Gabby notices the little girl and is like, I need to go to her. I need to go to her and take care of her. I know I hate to keep hammering this point in yet again. Hi, Darth Trinius. But once again, it's all about that parenthood mentality, that taking care of your kid approach. Because obviously she's just a doll, but everything she says is basically, I want to reach out and comfort that little girl, as if she was her own. And so there's this really touching scene of Gabby. She's so nervous, she doesn't know what to do. And so so the rest of the toys work together to basically draw the kid's attention to her. And then the kid reaches out to her, and, it just pulls her together. And the kid says, "Are you lost too?" And I'm actually losing it again. I lost it here. Like I said, this movie made me cry more than once. I lost it. "Are you lost too?" "It's okay. It's okay. We'll find you someone. We'll find your home." And so Gabby ends up providing that source of comfort necessary for the kid to be able to break out of that hole, that mental hole, which is why I said I've been in that headspace, and I understand that. So the kid goes out and finds a cop who actually does their fucking job. Excuse me. Finds a cop who actually reaches out to her and says, "Oh my God, yes, let's find your parents," and goes and gets her connected to her parents. And Gabby goes off and has a kid and a family now. And it was awesome. It was all awesome. So there's not really any spoilers per se in this film, despite the fact that I got the spoiler thing back here. But there are a couple, which is what I've been kind of building up towards. I mentioned how Toy Story 3 was about letting go. Well, that's kind of what Toy Story 4 is about. Basically, Toy Story 4 is about the idea that at a certain point in time, it's okay to live your own life after you've let go. I know that sounds like a strange statement, but anyone who's ever been a parent of any kind probably knows what I'm talking about. They've gone off. They've left for school, they've gone to college, they've moved out. A lot of parents, at least here in the States, and I'm speaking from experience with people I know, they don't move on, especially not immediately. They're still in parent mode. They're still in my life is for the kid mode. My mom was that way. I'll go ahead and give you that example. But what happens is Bonnie's in good hands, basically. Bonnie has Forky and the rest of the toys, and they're all going to take good care of her. And, yeah, exactly, Andrew. And Woody goes through this arc of basically realizing it's okay to live his own life now that he's done. Because again, and I stress this, Bonnie doesn't notice Woody. So Woody has done all the work and the effort to make sure that Bonnie is taken care of. And it's okay to go live his own life, which is what he ends up doing. So that's the big spoiler, is Woody ends up leaving. Woody ends up letting the rest of the toys go on and be part of the toy. And Woody stays behind with Bo Peep, who was also really awesome in this film, by the way. And they are lost toys, a.k.a. toys who don't have a kid. But whereas in most of the film portrays lost toys as a negative light, this then kind of showcases it in a positive way. Because not only can they still have fun with random kids in a temporary period, which there's this whole playground thing, it's really cool, but also because of the fact that they can help other kids find other toys. Which brings me to what might actually be the most awesome moment in the entire film. So there's this guy, and he's designed to be hateable. He's, I was going to say 23 years. Good God, Duncan! No, he's designed to be hateable. He's got the big, obvious headphones on. Every time he's on camera, they play a little bit of a muted soundtrack. under the background just to show how loud and how much he's toning out the world. And he's the guy working one of the stalls at the carnival. Now, you ever been to a carnival? Or you seen one on fiction? Because they all kind of hit the same points. It's true in real life and in fiction. The games are rigged. You're not really supposed to win those little toys. You're supposed to waste your money trying to win those stupid toys that are worth like $2, right? That's the design. We kind of talked about this earlier with regards to the whole thing. So this guy, he's kind of an asshole. The way he does his job is he sets up the stall and he does this. Kind of lines up here. And he's got this extremely dull face on. And just this horrible... Like, some of the kids are like, "Mister?" And he's just like, "What? Go away." That's what I mean when I say he's designed to be unlikable. He's very unapproachable. He's very rude. And he's just basically the way it is he just kind of leans there for, the entire shift, doing nothing because he expects none of the kids could ever actually win anything, because they don't. So what happens is the squad, it's like Bo Peep and Key and Peele and Woody and the Canadian guy who's played by Keanu Reeves, they're all there. And when the kid shoots, they go in the back and actually plunk the thing so the kid thinks that they hit it, even though they didn't. And then they have already freed all of the toys from the wall, and so they bring one of the toys and toss one of the toys up, and the kid's like, "Yay!" And remember, the film emphasizes over and over that toys want to be with kids, right? So this is basically freeing the toys from imprisonment by this carnival to go played with the kids. And of course, the kids get the toy their first try. So it's basically a win-win, right? It's this wonderful, uplifting, awesome scene as they're just like, "Yep, nope, free, yep." And then, of course, it cuts to the end of the guy's shift, and the guy didn't even notice any of this happening because, again, designed to be unlikable. So he's just like, "Oh my God, all the toys are gone." Yeah, that's when he finally notices that something's up. It was an awesome scene. Now, I've actually only got 2 minutes and 50 seconds left, so I'm going to wrap this up. This was an amazing movie. I don't know if it's quite at the levels of Toy Story 3 or some of the true greats amongst the Pixar and Disney archives, but this was a really good film. If you have not seen it and have an interest in seeing it, I highly recommend you see it. I notice we haven't had a lot of chat. I imagine that's because most of the people who want to see it haven't seen it yet, so I hope I'll see some comments about this on the VOD. There's a few points I'm not covering. There's a few interesting character beats. There's some excellent animation, some fantastic editing, wonderful humor, very emotional, awesome film I highly recommend. Now, I'm going to go ahead and chop this off.